stock prices of all biotechnology companies, Biogen, Idec, but pretty much the whole industry, have increased dramatically in the past few years. So you hear a lot of talk about whether we're in a bubble or not. I don't think this is a bubble. I think these price increases reflect actual increased value and increased productivity and a higher number of new drugs coming forward. That, I think everybody knows the statistics of R&D getting less and less efficient and costing more dollars per new drug, and that pattern persisted for a decade or more. I think we reached the nadir of that a few years ago, and we're now back on the upswing. And I think R&D is getting more productive. We'll see more new drugs coming out. We'll see more efficient R&D. And I think the stock prices you see are a reflection of that. And that's for a number of good reasons. The science has advanced tremendously. Our understanding of this whole new science of genomics, which caused great excitement in the 2000, it was an immature science then. And the techniques were not as powerful as people had thought they might be. And the understanding of how to use them was poorly developed. So now the techniques are more powerful, and I think even more importantly, the understanding of how to use those techniques and how they integrate with other technologies that we use is tremendously more powerful today than it was a few years ago. We're in a really good time, certainly as a company and as a whole industry, and I'm pretty optimistic that over the next decade or so we'll bring forward drugs to treat a lot of diseases that are not very well treated today. Partnerships are absolutely essential to what we do. It's a very competitive world that we live in and that we work in. Making new drugs is hard. Right? If it were easy, all the diseases will be treated already. And so we have to be honest and look ourselves honestly in the face and say, where are we truly world-class and where are we not? In those areas where we are not, we have to find collaborators who are, if that area is important for us to make new drugs. So many of our partnerships are working with people who we believe are among the best in the world at what they do, to work with our scientists to bring forward new medicines for drugs. Other kinds of partnerships are also important. That, we have a very good research group here, but the fact is most drugs will be discovered by people who don't work at Biogen Idec. Right? It's a big world and there are a lot of people working in it. And so there are a lot of small biotech companies, many people at universities who have interesting programs and interesting, let's say, compounds that could potentially turn into drugs some days. And so we're very active out, insourcing some of those and working with the people who've brought them forward to test them and hopefully eventually to bring a few of them onto the market. It is challenging to keep track of everything that's going on outside of the company. Most drug innovations do not come from academia, they come from smaller biotech companies. And so we monitor those very carefully. We have a running list of companies that work in areas that we're interested in, and we periodically talk with those companies. The barriers to partnerships between a company and academic scientists are almost always around intellectual property and who will own what. It's somewhat easier now than it used to be because I think people have learned over the years how to structure collaborations in a way that gives everybody what they need. Our consortium, where we put together a number of different scientists in a number of different academic institutions, together with our scientists, very complicated to work out all that intellectual property, but we did. And I think that's a credit to both our legal department and the attorneys at those institutions as well, to have the flexibility and the creativeness to solve that problem. These are long-term relationships that you're negotiating. It's not like you're buying a pair of shoes and you go away and they're your shoes. You're working with people over a number of years. If it becomes clear that the relationship that you negotiated isn't fair to one party or the other, it breaks down. And so it's in everybody's interest to get something fair right from the start. Wearable devices certainly are going to change the way we think about doing clinical trials and the way we think about understanding our patients, especially in MS. MS is a neurodegenerative disease that impacts mobility and that impacts cognition. of people. So there are a number of companies developing medical grade monitoring devices, either as wearables or patches, that will measure all kinds of motion, not only how far you walk and how fast you walk, but whether you have a tremor, whether you have a limp, so measure your gait, and all those things are coming. They'll measure heart rate, they'll measure blood pressure, they'll measure galvanic skin response. So all of that is going to transform the way we do clinical trials, for example. Right now in MS, one of the measures that we use is called a 25-foot walk test. So a patient comes in to a physician for a visit, and they walk 25 feet, and someone measures with a stopwatch how fast they walk 25 feet. Obviously, it would be better to have some wearable on that patient that monitored their activity 24/7, and we'd get a much better picture of how mobile that patient was. It may be a while before there's a regulatory accepted endpoints. The devices are going to have to be developed and validated and proven to be accurate and informative. But it'll be a shorter time before they're able to provide useful information to companies like us as we conduct earlier stage clinical trials. The amount of data we will get from these wearable devices is huge. If you think about putting devices on 1,000 patients and monitoring them real time, 24 hours a day for a year, you can just imagine how much data you accumulate. And so there are all kinds of issues. There are patient privacy issues. Who owns the data? Where does it go? What kind of permissions do you need? How do you transmit it securely in a HIPAA-compliant way? Those are technical questions. There are solutions to those, I'm sure. How you store the data, how long you store the data, how you analyze the data, how sophisticated the algorithms are to analyze the data. All are going to be crucial to what kind of information we get. And so that's part of the consideration as we decide with whom to work.